So good afternoon, everyone. So thank you very much for joining us in the afternoon plenary session of the 17th ERDT conference. Before we formally open the program, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our ERDT scholars, faculty advisors, and alumni. We would also like to acknowledge the ERDT steering committee members who organized this event, as well as participants from other organizations. So to formally open this session, we would like to welcome the Dean of the Gokong Wei College of Engineering of the De La Salle University and the project leader of ERDT DLSU, Dr. Kathleen B. Aviso.
Thank you very much for that, Marlon. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in the afternoon session of the 17th Engineering Research and Development for Technology Conference. This year's theme is on engineering innovation and technology for recovery and resilience. And I think that our theme is very apt for our situation right now. I'm not sure if you guys attended this morning's plenary session, but that session focused more on how we can recover back due to the current situation of the pandemic and was focused primarily on health issues. This afternoon session invites us to look a bit further and realize that the pandemic is not the only problem that we are facing today. So once we emerge from this pandemic, this session actually reminds us of more pressing issues that we need to address, such as issues on climate change and, of course, sustainability. And I'd like to congratulate the organizers for this particular conference to consistently remind our scholars and, of course, the rest of the Philippines of what science and research can actually contribute towards the nation and towards identifying potential solutions so that we can recover better, we can remain more resilient. And I think that's also one thing that the pandemic has really taught us, is to base our decisions on scientific results so that we can make better decisions. So I do hope that everyone will enjoy this conference, and I hope that you'll be able to take something from all of our esteemed speakers. And I hope that you will continue on joining us until tomorrow. So with that, I welcome you all to the afternoon plenary session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aviso. Now, to provide us with an overview of this afternoon session, we have our session moderator, Dr. John Frederick Tapia. Dr. Tapia is an associate professor in the Chemical Engineering Department of De La Salle University, Manila. As an early career researcher, his research interests include process systems engineering of low carbon energy systems, mathematical modeling of biomass value chains, specifically oil palm value chain, and geographical information system-based analysis of suitable lands for oil palm. He has published 26 Scopus indexed articles on this topic, including pioneering research in the application of neutrosophic sets in process synthesis and in data envelopment analysis. Once more, please welcome Dr. John Frederick Tapia.
Okay, thank you very much, Marlon, for that introduction. So for this session, we will be having 4 speakers that will give us some insights about sustainable energy. The sessions will provide us with insights about alternative and sustainable energy, as well as for the last one about disaster risk reduction through space-based technology and information and communication technology. So these are relevant to us, especially on meeting the sustainable development goals, specifically 7, which is affordable and clean energy, 11, which is sustainable cities and communities, and 14, life below water. The first talk is about the sustainability of Philippine biofuels industry, which is about the status and maybe future prospect of the industry. Then we'll have a talk on the marine renewable energy, which will discuss about the sustainable blue economy, which can provide us with something about reducing the impact of alternative offshore technology on marine biodiversity. Then we have about sustainable transportation and smart mobility, which has an opportunity to reduce the problems we have on the road. And lastly, on space-based technology and information and communication technology for disaster resilience. The talk is relevant to what happens to the Philippines every now and then. Strengthening the resilience of our country and reducing risk brought by calamity is important, especially for the economy. So we are lucky to have this speaker to provide us with this knowledge. So that's for our session, and I'm looking forward for the some interesting information about sustainable energy and disaster risk resilience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tapia. So we will now proceed to our talks for this afternoon. Please take note that we will have a panel discussion and open forum after the talks of our speakers. We would like to encourage everyone to take note of their questions so that you can ask them later on. Now for our first speaker. So we have the topic sustainability of the Philippine biofuels industry. So this will be delivered by Dr. Rex B. Demafelis. Dr. Demafelis is a professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He has taught and served for over 35 years and has received various awards for excellence in teaching and research. As one of the most prolific researchers in UPLB, his work includes biofuels production and policy development, life cycle assessment, carbon footprint, water footprint, and energetics. He also served as a technical advisor and consultant to various international and local institutions and companies. Please welcome Dr. Rex B. Demafelis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay. Arrange this. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you some of the researches that we've been and have conducted at the University of the Philippines, specifically the Department of Chemical Engineering. The title of my presentation is Sustainability of Philippine Biofuel Industry. That would cover both the bioethanol and biodiesel production in the Philippines. So this is the outline of my presentation, a very short introduction on biofuels industry. Then I will share to you 4 of our projects on the focusing on the environmental sustainability of biofuels production in the Philippines, covering phase 1 and phase 2 of a portion of the projects. Actually, this covers socioeconomic and environmental aspect, but this afternoon I'll be sharing to you the greenhouse gas carbon footprint life cycle assessment of 11 ethanol distilleries that we have just completed. Then another one, the life cycle assessment of increasing our biofuels blending from the current 10% to 20% for 2020. We were commissioned in 2018 to do this policy study. And the last one under this topic is the life cycle assessment of biodiesel production using the data that we've got from top coconut producing provinces in the country. And the last one will be the prospects towards a more sustainable biofuel industry in the country. And I'll be sharing to you 3 projects. Very quickly, I know that I have 15 minutes for this. Well, everyone knows that we have the Biofuels Law Republic Act 9367, and this was signed in January 12, 2007. The act of directing the use of biofuels, both bioethanol and biodiesel blending, to gasoline and diesel respectively. So we have very general objectives here for the climate change, fossil fuel independence, job generation, and local economy, and of course the locally sourced feedstock utilization. Then these are the basic objective of Republic Act 9367, a Biofuels Act. But this time, this afternoon, I will just be sharing to you the greenhouse gas emission and potential reduction, including the carbon footprint of bioethanol and biodiesel production, our current commercial distilleries and refineries in the country. Although we have also covered some of the other aspects like rural employment, income, the socioeconomic aspect. Currently, we have about 12 bioethanol distilleries. I think 13. There was already an additional one in Negros, having about 30 million liters per year. So this is our total capacity, 380.5. This is million liters per year, plus 30. That's 410 for the bioethanol distillery. And we have 13 biodiesel refineries in the country, basically located in Mindanao and in Luzon. And there are about 400 more coming for additional of to be added to the current 700. I think this is 707 million liters per year capacity. On the sustainable development goals, we will be covering, as mentioned, the clean energy. And of course, since we'll be focusing on the carbon footprint and greenhouse gas potential reduction, would be 13. So I'll show to you later the potential GHG reduction of our biofuel industry, both for the bioethanol, biodiesel. So lately, probably the COP20 has just concluded, and but in April 15, 2021, we have already submitted our NDC, or nationally determined contribution, and we have submitted a 75% reduction, but 2.71% is unconditional. The rest hints on some conditions that they would support, of course, the initiative of the Philippine government in reduction its GHG. So the first project, or the first two projects, is the socioeconomic and environmental impact of bioethanol production. This was funded by Sugar Regulatory Administration, covering phase 1 and phase 2. This was started 2018 and just completed the phase 2 just this year. And just a summary for the 15 minutes, quite short. I would like to show to you these numbers that we have computed through life cycle assessment. This covers 11 ethanol distilleries out of 12 in the country. There was only a problem on the operation of one distillery, so we're not able to assess them. And there is two columns here. Basically, both are 11 distilleries, but this one, the middle column is we're in phase 2 was evaluated using the data in 2017-2018, especially the economic data, the costing. While the last column, we tried to normalize. Instead of using 2017-2018, we use the same data for 2019-2020 of phase 2, so that you'll have the same economic data. So in short, you can see here that the carbon footprint of bioethanol production in the Philippines, covering 11 distilleries out of 12, is about 1,200. This is in grams carbon dioxide equivalent per liter ethanol produced, with a range of 287 grams CO2 equivalent per liter to 1,726. The corresponding greenhouse gas reduction is about 36 to 89%. You can see here that the best of our distillery could even provide us a bit higher than 75% GHG reduction. And based on our we use the CIMA Pro, and the EcoAdvent database in CIMA Pro showed that the sugarcane ethanol of Brazil has a carbon footprint of about 1,846. This is grams CO2 equivalent per liter, or a corresponding reduction of 31.58. While the US corn ethanol has footprint of 1,964.6, or equivalent to 27.19 GHG reduction. Basically, we use CIMA Pro, and this is also the result of CIMA Pro, so we were comparing apple to apple. we could say that we have, well, a good carbon footprint, a good potential GHG reduction of our ethanol distillery in the country, plus the fact that this is the result of 11 distilleries out of 12. Next is we tried to look at the current scenario wherein we have a 10% blending, but based on the Philippine Energy Plan, even way back 2012 and updated in 2018, there was really a plan to increase the blending from 10% to 20%. So we made some scenario wherein in 2015 we will have a 10% blending, E10 and E20, and in 2030 the same, E10 and E20, and 2030 actually 85% is just an optional. So we tried to compute at this blending percentage what would be the actual GHG reduction of the 10% bioethanol blended to gasoline, or 20%, or 85%. And we can see here that we have about 6.32 to 53% GHG reduction when we have a blending from 10, 20 to 85%. And the corresponding GHG avoidance in terms of tons carbon dioxide per year could be from 500,000 up to almost 20 million tons carbon dioxide per year if we will have an 85% blending. Conservatively, at 20%, we will have about 4.6 million tons of carbon dioxide. So looking at the 75% in NDC that we have committed and the unconditional 2.71, there is a great potential that at higher blending, even at lower blending, the Philippine bioethanol industry could contribute way above the 2.75% GHG reduction committed by the Philippine government. So this one is another project, the E20, or 20% in 2020. We were commissioned in 2018, so that's why there's a year that supposedly based on Philippine Energy Plan of 2012, E20 or 20% should have been started on 2020. So the question was in 2018, shall we implement E20 considering some of the issues surrounding the bioethanol industry in the countries, like the pricing and the lack of feedstock? So we make some work and study on the what are the benefits and what should be the best option of the Philippines if ever we will implement E20, despite the fact that we have some issues in the country. So we propose 3 policy recommendations. We lack feedstock. In the Philippines, we are using sugarcane and sugarcane molasses as our feedstock. And right now, we lack feedstock. Even we lack also our capacity of the distilleries. And the 3 options would be whatever the difference in terms of feedstock or raw material would be imported as first option. The second option would be totally importing the difference between the mandated volume needed and the local production. And the third option would be a 50-50, 50% ethanol and 50% molasses. And we use the multi-criteria and consider the following criteria for the policy analysis, criteria such as energy security, food security, economic cost, rural economy, environmental aspect, political acceptability, investment attractiveness, and technical consideration. And we rated them. Some are qualitative, some are quantitative. And we came up with the priority and weights and tried to get the weighted score of the 3 options. So E10 is 10%. This is our current blending. This is E20 if we totally import molasses, E20 if we totally import ethanol, and this is the mixture of 50% molasses and 50% ethanol being imported. And the result of the study showed that the best option for us is importing ethanol by difference. And we tried to look at the benefits out of importing ethanol, or the second option. And we were able to estimate, this was in 2018, the greenhouse gas avoidance for the year 2020 to 2030, the foreign exchange savings, because we will be importing a lesser cost ethanol compared to gasoline, rural employment generated out of this, and other significant contribution like on our energy mix, no additional investment because we'll be totally importing the product already, and improve the trade balance. Next is the project that we have on life cycle assessment in terms of carbon depth, payback analysis, and carbon savings, and energetic study of biodiesel production from coconut oil in the Philippines, funded by the Department of Energy through the National Biofuels Board. And well, this is our system boundary. We covered from the cultivation, milling and refining biodiesel, blending in a depot by law, and transporting to gasoline and biodiesel end use. And these are the provinces that we have covered in our data gathering. This basically is all over the country. We tried only the top coconut producing, and we analyzed and computed the carbon footprint from the cultivation down to use. And we also have these oil mills and biodiesel collaborating with us to oil mills and for biodiesel, providing us the technical information about biodiesel conversion, as well as refining, oil extraction, and oil refining. And the carbon footprint of our biodiesel production in these top coconut producing provinces showed that we have a carbon footprint of 1.11 kilogram carbon dioxide equivalent per liter of coconut metal ester or biodiesel. So it ranged from 1.1 to 1.15 with corresponding greenhouse gas reduction of 60 to 62%. Now, what are the prospects? Two of this work out of the three projects ay pinanganak during the pandemic. No? It was an option in UPLB to do simulation and optimization instead of doing wet laboratory for the thesis, a result of our masteral student. And we're looking at the prospects we're in. We'll try to improve the sustainability, at least, of the environmental sustainability of the bioethanol production in the country. But before that, let me share to you the result of the first 11 ethanol distilleries that we have conducted, and some of the hotspots that we have seen, and try to synthesize and come up with this recommendation. Basically, we recommended the cogeneration, try to convert the fossil-based fuel to biomass. And number three, improvement of process efficiency, particularly on the fermentation, distillation, dehydration, maximize CO2 recovery from the ethanol fermentation. And of course, the fertilization and use of high-yield sugarcane variety. And looking at the market of filter cake and wastewater treatment sludge. This recommendation focus on how to improve the carbon footprint. But as I will show you later on, focusing only on item number 3 and item number 4, which are the increasing the efficiency in the fermentation, distillation, dehydration, and maximization of carbon dioxide recovery, we could still lower the carbon footprint and increase the greenhouse gas potential. The recommendation here in terms of increasing process efficiency are very practical, because the recommended fermentation efficiency up to 90% is already a practice of some of our distilleries. In the same way, the distillation, recovery, or efficiency, and dehydration of at least 98 to 99% would lower the carbon footprint. And again, 98 and 99% distillation, dehydration efficiencies are already practiced by some of the distilleries. And for the carbon dioxide recovery, if they could only set a minimum of 60% recovery, that would bring down the carbon footprint and increase the greenhouse gas reduction. Again, some companies could recover at least 60% carbon dioxide. Again, if the industry would only share their good manufacturing practices, their best practices in fermentation, distillation, dehydration, and CO2 recovery, the whole industry would really reduce their footprint and could contribute a substantial amount, a bigger amount of greenhouse gas reduction for the Philippine or country's initiative in reducing it. So using that scenario, the four conditions in increasing the efficiency of fermentation, distillation, and dehydration, as well as recovering at least 60% of carbon dioxide, there would be a decrease of carbon footprint from 1,199 to 418, or a difference of 65%. And the GHG shown earlier of 55.54 would be increased to 84%. And this is a big one, higher than our commitment of 75% in our NDC. And the avoidance would increase from 528,000 to 803, or a 52% increase. So we are encouraging the industries, although we could not divulge the best practices they have, because we signed the non-disclosure agreement with each of the plant that we have been collaborating, both the bioethanol and biodiesel. But we are appealing to the association that within the ranks, they could share best practices. Anyway, we still import ethanol more than 50% of the mandated volume in the country. So there's another one assessment that we did for a commercial biodiesel refinery. We just completed this last month, and it's very encouraging to show to you the result of this study. So we, again, just like in the earlier research that we have conducted, funded by the National Biofuels Board and Department of Energy, we started from the coconut cultivation, copra making, oil extraction, oil refining, biodiesel production, and biodiesel use. And I just want to show to you one of these slides, because again, we are under a non-disclosure agreement, but I asked permission from the company to show this particular slides, and it showed that the footprint here is only 0.6 kilograms CO2 per kilogram biodiesel, or a reduction potential of 82%. And if we are to compare this with the different biodiesel production all over the world, well, this is only one of the slides, taken from Intelligent Energy Source in 2015. We have really a good one. But even with other biodiesel production systems in Asia, we still have a very good carbon footprint and greenhouse gas reduction if it is based on this company. So we are very encouraged that a good practice, manufacturing practice of one company, which could be shared or could be shared to the whole industry, would really reduce the carbon footprint of the industry, as well as increasing its greenhouse gas reduction, helping the national government meet its NDCs. So if we will follow, or if we will adopt that good practice of that company, there will be an increase in the percent GHG reduction at a different blending. Current blending now for biodiesel is 2%. Of course, the Philippine Energy Plan projects up to 20% blending, or even a higher one. And this is now the conservative greenhouse gas reduction if we will just use that particular good manufacturing or production system, increasing from 1.2 to 1.6. Well, you can see here this is below 2.71, but at 5% blending, which we are very hopeful that would be implemented, there will be an increase from 3.16 to 4%, even up to 83% at 100% blending or biodiesel use. So this one is another work wherein we focus on sugar production. This project was funded by Sugar Regulatory Administration, looking at the socioeconomic and environmental impact of sugar production in the country. We just completed also this project, but out of this project, there's a spin-off study made by one of our masteral students looking at the process optimization. We try to simulate using sugar software, one of the sugarcane production system. And because we have identified that the sugar loss is highest at the pan boiling. And we tried to zoom in here using Sugar software for simulation. And we tried to come up with different options, different production models. I just want to show to you the case 3 and case 4. This is a double inward. These are different pan boiling system. No, this is the normal one, and we tried to look at the sugarcane or sugar recovery of a double inward system, and we came up with a higher sugar recovery of 91%, but for a low grade sugar of 14 bricks sugarcane juice, and a higher quality sugarcane at 18% bricks of sugar juice. And I think I have not included here, but based on the computation, there is about 80 million pesos per year additional costs or additional income out of the increase in sugar recovery. So we thought of coming up with, since sugarcane and sugarcane molasses are the feedstock of bioethanol production, we try to focus on the feedstock production, trying to lower it, the cost, so that in effect we'll be able to lower the cost of ethanol in the country, aside from working on its environmental impact. So another one, we use Aspen software and try to focus now on in the ethanol distillation or ethanol production. And in the ethanol production, the one of the potential areas wherein we could reduce the greenhouse gas and increase the product recovery is on the distillation. And we tried to work on the looking at the optimum tray location. And we have two scenarios. One scenario is we try to focus on reduction of energy costs. And we found out that the tray location should be relocated at tray 69. Another scenario is we try to increase our product recovery. And if we do that, the tray location should be at plate or tray 60. This would increase the energy reduction by 5.79%. We should increase the product recovery or ethanol recovery at 3.10. And looking at the carbon footprint effect and the financial statement, if we work on the reduction of energy, there will be a reduction of footprint of 11.05% from the footprint of 747 to 688 grams carbon dioxide per liter. However, if we work on the scenario 2, the carbon footprint reduction is very minimal at only 0.07. So from the carbon footprint perspective, scenario 1 is better than scenario 2, or you work towards the reduction of energy. However, on the financial assessment, option 1 or scenario 1 would provide an additional income of 1.4 million per year to the company, while scenario 2 could provide about 68 million pesos per year. And since you will be retrofitting the distillation, there is an additional investment, and we try to compute for the return on investment for both scenario. And it showed it's very favorable. In fact, one of the ethanol distilleries volunteered, and last September, they have already retrofitted their ethanol distillation setup, trying to look at and locate the optimum feed plate, basically working towards this. And we have got already the 2 reports that basically there are no ethanol in the waste stream or in the bottoms, or we call it distillery stuffs. Nothing. Probably there are, but because of the limitation of sensitivity of their analysis, the results were nothing in terms of they could not detect it, in short. And just this morning, again, it was reported that confirming the result of they could not detect the ethanol in the waste stream. So with this, we're looking at the, of course, the income of of the ethanol distilleries, hoping that if they would be increasing their income through increasing their recovery, the cost of ethanol per liter in the country would be reduced. And I think that's all for my presentation. And thank you very much again for this opportunity. I hope I got my 15 minutes right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dimafelis. Once more, we will have an open forum later on after our talks. So if you have questions, please make sure to ask them later on. So our next speaker will talk about harnessing marine renewable energy towards the blue economy. So he is a green and blue technopreneur who specializes in marine renewable energy and other technology-enabled innovation-infused sustainability transitions. He has over 15 years of experience in various roles in the innovation and research development and demonstration ecosystems of the Asia-Pacific region, working with academia, industry, and government, and has contributed to the inclusion of marine renewable energy in Southeast Asia's energy mix at various scales. He also successfully initiated, executed, and handed over a community-based energy intervention program for accelerated post-disaster recovery with a sustainability plan involving various stakeholders. Please welcome the Assistant Director and Program Director of the SAB-NTU Joint Lab, Dr. Michael Lokinvar Abun.
Hello, good afternoon. Mic check, can you hear me? Okay, naman? Okay, very good. So I'm here to speak about marine renewable energy as an enabler towards the blue economy. So as a background, the Ocean Pixel is a spin-off of the Energy Research Institute at Nanyang Technological University, incorporated in 2014. And it was formed to serve looking at sustainable ecosystems in the marine islands, coastal environments. And one of the major enablers for activities in those areas as well as industries would be the presence of energy. And beyond energy, of course, the whole sustainability story hinges on proper growth, sustainable growth, and sustainable development. This is also articulated and supported by a digital revolution that's happening to support these ongoing global transformations. So marine renewable energy sometimes is mistaken or interchanged with ocean renewable energy. So just to get this foundation commonly communicated, marine renewable energy as defined by the European Science Foundation as renewable energy production which makes use of marine resources or marine space. Now that could include offshore wind, that could include solar PV, floating or seabed mounted, marine biomass, macroalgae, and also ocean renewable energy, which looks at 5 different types of resources: currents, high tide, low tide, waves, salinity gradient, and thermal gradient. So in a sense, you can see that ocean renewable energy is a subset of marine renewable energy. So that being said, ocean renewable energy resources, as mentioned earlier, look at harnessing certain types of kinetic or potential or hybrid or potential kinetic energy to a certain extent by different types of technologies. So that you can see some images here. So currents, which could be ocean currents or tidal currents, tidal-driven currents, are typically harvested by hydrokinetic turbines, and these are placed underwater. There are instances where you have maybe an underwater kite and other novel sort of fish-like devices that could take advantage of the flow of water. And this operates similar to run-off river without trapping the water, and also wind turbines. In this case, the fluid is not air but water. Harnessing tides, the high tide and low tide action is called the tidal barrages. This technology utilizes the potential energy from the difference in height between high and low tide, typically using a dam-like structure similar to what you see on the right side here. These are already present in countries like Canada, France, the UK, and Korea, but there's an ongoing debate as to the amount of environmental impact that these tidal range installations have. So, and they're only economically viable sort of in places where there's 4 meter of tidal range and above. In the Philippines, we only have 3 meters as our tidal range. Wave looks at the surface motion, pressure fluctuations from below the surface, or wind-driven waves. So then ocean thermal energy harnesses the difference in hot water at the surface and then cold water maybe at 800, 1,000 meters below, and that could form as base load power. And salinity gradient is looking at the harnessing the difference in salt concentration. Let's say freshwater rivers going into, let's say, the estuary to the sea, you have a difference in saltiness from one side, and then this difference in concentration of salt can be utilized using certain permeable or semi-permeable membrane technology to generate electricity. So it's also important to note that just as with other technologies, we need to be aware of the status of the technologies and what's called a scale, a technology readiness level scale, which was popularized by NASA in the way that they try to launch systems and rockets. So the technology readiness level gives us a sense of how commercial and sort of whether they are still in basic principles, research and development in the lab, experimental tests, doing kind of scale pilot, or has it been demonstrated, prototype in the real world, and has it been operationalized? So getting us all the way to pre-developed, pre-commercial, and then commercial. So you can see where offshore wind and marine floating solar are. They are in a range of technology readiness levels all the way to pre-commercial and then commercial, where tidal ranges, tidal streams are, and followed by other technologies like wave energy and OTEC sort of in the TRL6 range, and then deep ocean current and salinity gradient sort of following on in the TRL4 sort of laboratory scale or TRL5 range. So these options for a country like the Philippines and somewhat parts of the Southeast Asian region, like Indonesia, for instance, have presence of resources. So for solar and wind in the marine environment, there is a very high chance of feasibility. In fact, World Bank already mentioned that offshore wind potential is 178 gigawatts for the Philippines, and then quantifying also solar in the calm and bay areas of up to 50-meter depth, you'd come up to a very, very high number as well in a gigawatt level. So the other resources, tidal currents, waves, ocean thermal energy conversion resources are high in the Philippines, but the TRL level might not be that high, could be medium, right? So you would probably go for, in terms of commercial development, those with lower risk in terms of technology, and therefore more investors could come in and then finance these projects. So it's a bit ironic because the R&D will also need to be financed as well, but through a different pot before you can move on with the technology. So the tidal range and tidal barrages, I think there needs to be a smaller scale pilot of technologies that can economically work for countries with 3 meters and less like the Philippines. And salinity gradient, probably too expensive without any co-application. It requires a bit of energy recovery for other applications like desalination plants to make the economics work. But this is already being done globally. So for examples of sustainable energy that involve marine renewables are already present in the world. Like the Orkney Islands, for instance, in 2014, they were already meeting their demand, 107% renewable production, including wave and tidal. And now I think they're at 130%, so they now need to export back to the grid. So this archipelagic arrangement configuration of islands is very familiar to folks like us in the Philippines because we have island clusters too. So it is possible to do it. It is possible to go 100% RE on these islands and island clusters. Of course, there are questions around how much will it cost, whether or not it makes sense, etc., but it is technically possible. So moving forward, I guess globally speaking, Southeast Asia has more than 1,000 sites, possibly over 200 megawatts each, or roughly around that range that people can harness energy from. So it's important that we know that we have potential. It's just that maybe it's not as publicized or studied in depth or articulated as well. Developing countries have a way of looking at the resource and harnessing it through, in the Southeast Asian context, not in offshore oil and gas methodologies, where they have, I see on the right side here, very large machines possibly that go into 2 megawatt range, large scale, using offshore support vessels and dynamic positioning. But in countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, we go for a little more sort of islandic scale. So the islands have lower demand, for instance, not hundreds of megawatts, but in the 1 to 10 megawatt range, right? And then you go for systems that are modular, so sort of in the 50, 100 kilowatt range, and then have many of them deployed. An example in Singapore that we have is this mentality of going smaller and modular with co-applications. There exists a certain device called a cushion roller in most of the jetties in the Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia location that go up and down with the waves and with the tides. This roller is actually a low energy extraction device as compared to, let's say, those for significant wave heights of more than 1 meter, HS of less of 0.5 to 1, and then this is harnessing energy at half a meter significant wave height. But the advantage of it is that you scale down also a lot of the complexities with a not so energetic environment versus that of super energetic environment. So higher waves, higher energy, higher risk, and offshore challenges. Whereas, if you have a coastal base or jetty based system, you are more or less in a safe harbor. So that means that you can look at dry setup, lower risk, easier maintenance, and of course there's a spectrum in between. Now, islandic or archipelagic countries may want to take advantage of easy to deploy systems, modular systems, and this is a demonstration project we did with NTU, Sentosa, and project developer, as well as a consortium of the supply chain from shipbuilders to turbine makers to environmental people to offshore installation and surveyors. So there is a wider economy around just deployment of marine renewable energy. There are services that go around the development of offshore installations. So systems like that can be replicable, and I'm just gonna maybe play this video just to let you know.
To hybridize their solutions, but rarely do you have.
So I'm not gonna be speaking so much, just to show you.
Solutions and develops a pathway for marine renewable energy to enter Southeast Asia.
So I'm gonna turn off the audio for now, and just to show you time lapse of the build of that catamaran, which I think in the context of the Philippines, we are actually able to do that with shipbuilding capability. We are number 4 in the world in terms of shipbuilding, Subic and Cebu. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. And tugs and tows, we have those. We definitely have the same environment as many islands in Southeast Asia. This is in Indonesia, and then this is in Singapore. So Indonesian deployment had like an old barge. In Singapore, it was a purpose-built catamaran, and I think the learning that we had here was to look at how these initial systems may try to develop pathways, and show that there's more than just a technology piece in terms of deploying marine renewable energy, and there's a whole ecosystem development, and that's why we anchor this particular talk as exploiting or taking not just energy but also seeing that there are human resources that could be developed as well around such systems. And what we will then, if we hop one more level, you could look at applications such as fish farming, you know, and then so the aquaculture, ice making, water production, etc. So I'm just showing you pictures of the project in Indonesia.
The local
and then
project.
So you can also look at the kind of numbers where, you know, hybridizing an off-grid island, which traditionally would have maybe levelized cost of energy of 50 US cents per kilowatt hour, you can bring that down by 20% to 36.8, even lower now because of the maturity of these things. And if it's not that remote, you know, you can bring it down to less than 30, less than 25 if needed. And there are factors obviously affecting the levelized cost of energy, and there are also keys to success. You need to find a match of the right site with the right resource, the right kind of market that's willing to pay for, let's say, that kind of energy or that kind of service, and the appropriate technology and appropriate project structure in between. So there's a table here that I'm showing, which I don't want to bore you with, but this just shows a gradual change from the first arrays or first projects to, let's say, what happens in the subsequent arrays and the commercial projects. So there's a general reduction for wave, tidal, and OTEC from high capex, high project LCOE, and you know, not so attractive in returns during the first projects, obviously. But as you deploy more and more systems, it becomes more investable, more attractive. So there is a general downward trend as you deploy more and more capacity. And the marine energy markets start with short-term diesel replacement or displacement, and then medium-term maybe some co-applications of water pumping, desalination, and aquaculture before going to grid-tied electricity.
Ocean energy.
There are many different types of configurations for ocean energy. Jetty-based, sort of near coastal, near-shore floating, underwater, medium water column, and then seabed-mounted systems. Could be large turbines, could be small mini turbines, could be vessel-mounted, and many more combinations. So the project design is as important as the technology, the economics, and sort of the markets, because you're looking at how you combine, whether you're looking at hybrids, multiple technologies, combine floating solar with tidal currents and wave energy in one location. It's also possible. But then you have pros and cons, obviously. So marine floating solar, maybe it's sort of simple to do that, but then you need a larger size to generate the same amount of power and energy for tidal current turbines, because you're harnessing a very dense resource moving at a certain flow. You need a little less, but then, you know, when you combine the two, you may have the best of both worlds, so to speak. You know, so there are locations in the Philippines which obviously have good resources, and you know, those in boxes in green here are those with good currents. The ones encircled in red are those with wave energy resources. But then, you know, we have yet to tap with any installation at the moment any of these resources at this point in time. And the USD has funded an R&D project with the Ateneo de Davao University, hopefully to deploy an R&D version of an ocean renewable energy system. You know, I think they're focusing primarily on hydrokinetics or tidal currents. So there are systems out there, especially in Canada, that actually look at combining sort of the turbines and then making sure that they basically get floating systems in the water, and you know, they consider various operations and maintenance and assembly, and this have to do with making sure that we lower cost of operation and maintenance as well by making turbine access easy. For instance, people, locals using whatever boats they have should be able to maintain it without the need for, let's say, specialized vessels. And so you also need to generate local content. Of course, assembly and maybe some part manufacturing could be also done. And I'm showing you this because the inspiration for this floating platform came from a trimaran, similar to what we see in our outriggers in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and was designed with a context of the market in mind in Southeast Asia. So with the Singapore catamaran project, this UK company then designed this system, deployed it in Scotland, brought over the same sort of technology into Canada, developed the ecosystem of the marine service providers, built a larger system locally in Canada, and now are deploying that system. So the same story could happen in a country like the Philippines. So now there is a nationally appropriate mitigation action support project that has committed 25 to 40 million euro to look at hybrid tidal plus solar plus energy storage systems for off-grid islands in the Philippines. So this hybrid combination obviously will feature, other applications, could be telcos or, other energy users. And just to give you a sense of what costs might be, we have no time, I know, apologies, so I'll wrap up in 2 minutes. There is a case for reducing now the true cost of generation in the islands. So if we can bring down the true cost of generation to something which is already using renewables, then that might be a case for the subsidy to be better utilized. So the pathway for hybridized marine renewable energy would need to take place before we can go to large-scale grid-tied projects. And the Asian Development Bank is promoting this MARES concept of marine aquaculture, reef rehabilitation and reef monitoring or reef regeneration, if possible, with renewable energy and ecosystem and ecotourism for ecosystem services. So that gives the enabling characteristics that we see required for the blue economy. And the blue economy does not just stop with energy, it has to do with enabling transportation, enabling ports, automation of processes, looking at aquaculture, water production, ice making, digitalization, and even more. So hopefully some of these sustainable integrated development projects for islands and coasts can be formulated, even though they start small. And I guess the pilot projects would need to come from various efforts, but some synergy will be very, very helpful. And we can talk about an enriched regional ecosystem where future, let's say, hydrogen economy and regenerative marine industries and impact can be better reached. So accelerating pilot projects, as what was mentioned in looking at this integrated development projects would be the key to making this happen. And I suppose to summarize, just 3 points really. Marine renewable energy options do exist. So that's the first truth. And the second one is that greening the marine and maritime ecosystems with, let's say, low-hanging fruits and a lot of these interventions is possible. And the third one is the how, the approach. Progressive development approach towards the blue economy, starting with maybe the energy quote-unquote enabler, will bring about other capability development and ecosystems beyond just the environmental ecosystems, also the human capital and the capability that is developed in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abundo, for that insightful talk. Again, if you have questions for Dr. Abundo or any of our earlier speakers, so we will have We will have an open forum later on, so please write down your questions and you can ask them during our open forum. So our next talk will be on smart mobility and sustainable transportation. So our next speaker is a professor of mechanical engineering and the executive dean of the Enrique Razon Jr. Logistics Institute of the De La Salle University. He is also the executive director of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, and this has a very strong understanding and access to the whole e-mobility value chain in the country. Likewise, he is a technology advisor of Toho Motors Corporation, one of the biggest local electric vehicle manufacturing companies in the Philippines. Please welcome Dr. Jose Bienvenido Manuel Bayona.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone. So it's my pleasure to share some insights of sustainable mobility, electric vehicles, and smart mobility to everyone this afternoon. Looks like having problems with my presentation. Let me share it again. Okay, that's better now. So I'll be initially giving a short overview of sustainable mobility and then also touching on some projects that we're working on. I'll provide some industry updates on the electric vehicle industry and then electric vehicle adoption projections, electric vehicle and research, some stuff that you can also work on. Yeah. Okay, so on sustainable mobility, I'd like to start by introducing the concept of avoid, shift, and improve. So how do we make our mobility more sustainable? Number one is avoid. Which means that we reduce the need to travel. So if you do land use, a good land use planning, for example, then you reduce the amount of trips that you need to do. If you implement some multimodal logistics change, which is very common right now, okay, then you also reduce the amount of travel that you need to do delivering goods. Another way also to improve the sustainability of mobility is to do shifting, which means then that you shift to a more environment-friendly mode. So if before you're using your own car and then you shift to public transport, okay, so that's an example of shift. Okay, you shift a mode which are higher capacity, so we choose now on a per kilometer travel basis the amount of emissions that you produce. Or if right now you're using your car and then you suddenly shift to cycling, then that is also an example that also greatly reduces your emissions and your air pollution contributions and also greenhouse gas contributions. Okay, and lastly, we have what we call the improve, which means if you're still you're driving your car, you need to continue to drive your car, but this time you're using, for example, an electric vehicle. So then you're improving the technology that you're using. So you're not changing the mode that you're using. You're not reducing the amount of travel that you're doing, but you're improving the technology, okay, of the vehicle or the mode that you're using. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the main pillars of sustainable mobility. However, another concept is that there's no solutions that fits all. So, like for example, if okay, I have a couple of pictures there. Okay, on the right, the first group you have there industrial and residential. That shows the cost of power in Visayas, Luzon, and Mindanao. As you will see there, the power is highest. Power cost is highest in the Visayas. It's lowest in Luzon. So maybe in Luzon, electric vehicles would fare better in terms of economics compared to the Visayas. So yes, so definitely economics is one area that is one aspect that you need to consider. In the same way, also if power prices varies throughout the country, the prices of petrol fuel also varies. You will see there it's highest, for example, in the graph shown, you have there the fuel price. This is ADO is automotive diesel oil. The price of automotive diesel oil in Caldera region is highest. These are data from 2017 to 2018, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So So, okay, maybe electric vehicles would be more economic attractive in in the Cordillera region compared to the other regions because you've got high cost of fuel. Yeah. So those are on the economics, but another aspect, for example, is on your grid. So you have higher renewable energy share in the Visayas compared to Luzon. So environmentally, it might make more sense to adopt electric vehicles in the Visayas compared to Luzon. But of course, there are trade-offs because earlier, as we said, um, fuel power prices in the Visayas is highest in throughout the country. So these are things that you need to weigh down. I think the first two speakers provide a very good segue to this slide. It was earlier mentioned by Dr. Ribafiris that there are regions in the country that are rich in biofuels. So maybe in those regions, instead of going electrics, it might be good to focus more on biofuels. So you have to also to look at the resources that are available uh, in the in the area. So and also as mentioned there just a while ago, there are also marine energy rich areas in the country. So in those cases, maybe it would be good to go more for electrics because you have got better access to clean energy. What I want to drive at in here is that it might not be a good idea to just come up with a national environmental sustainable transport plan. You might need to have regional environmental sustainable transport plan because conditions are different, travel requirements are different, prices are different, resources are different. And a while ago, I mentioned about travel behaviors are different and conditions are different. Okay, let me share with you one of the work that okay, we're doing right now. This is a public transport route planning tool. And the thing that this works is okay, we're trying to minimize what we call the transport undesirability. So this is now where, for example, okay, analytics could come in. So we try to gather data, plot out what are the transport undesirability of people in various barangays, and you can use that now to plan out the public transport system to reduce the transport undesirability in the area. So this is a tool that we've developed. Initially, we started with a grant from the Commission on Higher Education. So that sets the baseline system, and this is now being supported by PSHERD. So we're now integrating some planning planning processes within this framework. So there will be three modes of planning that you can do. You can do a completely manual planning, wherein you set the routes and then the system simply computes the impact on the transport and desirability. Second would be hybridized, wherein you can lock certain routes and then can let the system identify other routes to complement existing routes. And the third one is where AI comes in, wherein it will automatically plan out the public transport system for that will be able to reduce the most the transport undesirability. And of course, the transport undesirability would have to take into account realities of the ground, like performance requirements, like waiting time, the economics. Definitely, that would be very important. Now, let me go to, okay, earlier we said avoid, shift, and improve. Let me now go to a technology that is that is very related to shift. So why e-mobility in the Philippines? We did a study for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And by changing all jeepneys alone in Metro Manila to electric jeepneys, it provides you actually around 8.5 billion pesos of health impact savings annually. Yeah, so I think that is a very good argument why we have to go for electric vehicles. Okay, second is uh, transport accounts for a bulk of our petroleum imports. So yeah, so shifting to electric vehicles reduces our petroleum imports. That improves our trade balance. That diversifies further our energy requirements, and that improves our energy security. It has always been asked whether going electric in a country which still hosts a big portion of which still has a lot of fossil fuel in the grid, will that really reduce greenhouse gases? We need some life cycle assessment, okay, of electric vehicles for the bus, modern jeepney, and bicycle segments. As you see there, the results is significantly reduces your greenhouse gases. Um, and as you will see there, the reductions is not only on the in-use phase, but also on the fuel production phase. And then lastly, there's no way to go. Okay, the world is going electric. If you don't go electric, if you don't, will eventually will not be part of the global automotive supply chain. So we have to start somewhere. In addition, electric vehicles are very simple. As you will see there, a normal car, a conventional car, has 2,000 plus moving parts, but an electric vehicle only has 18 plus moving parts. So that way to simplify things, that opens up the chance for Philippines to come up with its own automotive brand. So we can build it. In addition, we have some resources okay, to bank on. We have lots of nickels and cobalts, but of course, our nickel comes in laterite form, which is not that pure really. So I hope some of you would want to look at how to purify nickels to the level that they may be used for battery production. But it might be good also to look at to focus now more on solid state batteries because that is now the trend. So maybe we can look at leapfrogging battery technology to solid state batteries. So just some updates. These are the official LTO electric vehicle registration in the country. As you will see there, it's mostly motorcycles and tricycles. By the way, these are not the stock numbers. Okay, these are vehicle registrations, and we all know that if a vehicle is new, you register it 3 years after. So okay, the actual stock numbers are expected to be a lot higher than this one. Okay, 2018, we have lots of motorcycles and tricycles. This is mostly traced to the rollout of the DOE electric tricycles. In 2019, you saw there a surge of utility vehicles. Those are electric jeepneys, and these are mostly attributed to the rollout of the PUV modernization program. But things have slowed down since then. We all know we have the pandemic. A couple of electric vehicle companies, local electric vehicles company, actually has closed down. But we hope that eventually they'll open again once the pandemic passes and once the economy normalizes. Recently, we have seen also surge of electric vehicle models that are available now in the country. You see there the Nissan Leaf, BYD E6, Hyundai Kona, Dongfeng ER30, Hyundai Ioniq, Jaguar I-Pace, Chery Arizo. We don't see these vehicles 3-4 years ago. And you also see a lot of locally available plug-in hybrids now in the market. The Ioniqs, the Outlanders, the BYD Kins. There's also, in fact, now a Range Rover plug-in hybrids available in the market locally, and some Volvo plug-in hybrid vehicles. So yeah, so the automotive world is very bullish about EVs in the countries. They might be seeing some signs. Of course, they don't just roll out these things without any basis. So yeah. There must be is a sign that there's a lot of potential electric vehicle market locally. Okay, currently there are 155 chargers. Okay, these are mostly AC chargers, mostly hosted by companies that has adopted electric vehicles and also some public transport cooperatives and companies. A couple of DC chargers, and then you have a couple of battery swapping stations, normally catering to electric jeepneys and electric tricycles. it has been an exciting time for the electric vehicle industry this past 2 years. Just a week ago, the electric vehicle industry bill has been approved in the BICAM, so which means then that there, there will be 2 steps left, okay, before it becomes a law. And then also this year, the electric vehicle guidelines and regulations was passed or was introduced by the Land Transportation Office. We all know that the public utility vehicle sector is being modernized, so that also creates a lot of opportunities for the entry of electric vehicles. Policies on charging stations are also now being finalized and introduced to the market. And the Department of Trade and Industry is now preparing the electric vehicle incentive strategy. And on top of this all, the Department of Energy has also commissioned a team to develop the comprehensive electric vehicle industry roadmap for the country. So we hope that we accelerate EV adoption soon. These are just some updates on the market. The PUV modernization is set to introduce EG green routes. So these are routes wherein only electric jeepneys can run, so no Euro 4 diesels. In the BAO, there's a high bus priority system. The high priority bus system that is being crafted, and it involves rolling out around more than 300 electric buses. We're all familiar with the DOE E-Trike. Philpost is now also transitioning to electric vehicles in the delivery of their parcels, and the diffusion of minibus corporate shuttles is also now increasing in the country. And maybe one thing that would be very important to note is under the newly approved BICAM version of the electric vehicle bill, it actually ensures at least 5% of government vehicles to be electric. Also also industrial and commercial company vehicles to be electric, public transport to be electric. So that somehow creates a market for electric vehicles in the country, because the lack of the market is one of the major issues why the electric vehicle manufacturing industry cannot really develop. But now we hope that with this law, things would change. Question is, will the people adopt them? In 2018, we did a study for DTI, and we actually we look at consumer behavior. We did surveys, and we modeled the consumer behavior, and we try to simulate what happens if the Philippines introduce tax incentives and develop the EV infrastructure. So you will see there the impact came from a projected 11,660 annual sales of electric vehicles to households. In 2030, we're expecting to triple that. So definitely tax incentives and infrastructure development are expected to help the adoption of the vehicles. And while the adoption of EVs in other segments are expected to be mostly policy based. So by 2030, keyword, if all policies are put in place, we're expecting a stock of around 300,000 electric vehicles on the ground and an annual sales of 45,000. So where can the science community comes in? Okay, let's try to have a snapshot of the value chain analysis of electric jeepneys. This is a very detailed analysis, so I would want to call your attention to the shaded portions. For market development, okay, the main issues are inferior performance features compared to conventional units, okay, higher total investments. For the electric vehicle supply assembly, limited design flexibility and economical production processes. Battery cell production, you would see there that you have foreign control of lithium battery raw materials, high HPAL investments. For financing, financially high risk is a financially high risk market, limited government resources. So all of these things actually, in all these things, science can do something. So the electric vehicle industry would welcome any research that would focus on these things. Um, okay, this slide shows where electric tricycles are mostly adopted now. You have Coron, Boracay, and Naga City. Of course, we know Coron and Boracay. These are tourist areas. Okay, Naga City, this is a provincial area. Okay, why are they mostly adopted in these areas? Okay, simple reason that they have higher income potential in these areas. And in Naga, for example, although it's not really a tourist area, but the daily mileage of electric vehicles, of electric tricycles in Naga City is quite high. So that increases your cost savings relative to the conventional unit. So right now, still, it's mostly the adoption of electric vehicles are mostly site specific because of the cost difference. Okay, but all of this, another reason also is there is right now a high uncertainty on the role of electric tricycles. In the PUV modernization program, you see in there the hierarchy of public transport. You start with buses at higher volume, then you have the modern jeepneys, and then on the third line you have in there what we call the class 1 jeepneys. So these are smaller sized jeepneys. Okay, before that is the main market for these electric tricycles. But now under the PUV modernization, that is set to be replaced by set to be handled by class 1 jeepneys. So which means then that you have a problem on the viability of the electric tricycles on the current designs, because they can definitely not compete economically with the class 1 units. At the same time, they're too big to compete with and too expensive to compete with the ordinary in the routes that are served by ordinary tricycles. This is also where science can come in and combine with the required policies. So, like for example, if we combine tricycle operation only in the side streets, that actually opens up a market for electric tricycles. We've done some torque analysis of side street drive cycles, and we know that a 2 kilowatt system electric tricycle could handle the driving requirements in there, and that greatly reduces your initial cost of 250,000, which is very comparable to the Bajaj RE tricycles that you see now in the market. So that's where also engineering guys could come in, like customizing the right vehicle for the right application. So electric vehicle, however, is more than electric tricycles, electric jeepneys. We see now electric vehicles used a lot in the tourism industry. Okay, also in the logistics industry. We see there on the lower right, that's one of the vehicles that we're developing in the urban e-mobility laboratory, that we're setting up in Pasig City. It's also used a lot now in corporate for corporate applications. You see that on the lower left, you see there the electric van that we're multi-platform electric van that we're developing, also to be rolled out in our e-mobility laboratory, urban laboratory in Pasig City. Yeah. Let me show you now what we're doing. So to end my talk, just some parting words. We always recall the ASI framework: avoid, shift, and improve, and then no solution fits all. Smart systems and vehicle technologies are just means to the end. The end really is sustainable mobility. And sustainability is multidisciplinary. It combines policies, it combines various engineering and technology disciplines. Um, we're right now demonstrating a co-creation solution activity in Pasig City, and we find it very helpful. Really knowing what's the need of the industry and the society. So co-create solutions. Okay, don't force them, and have a complete plan, but be flexible. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Biona, for your very insightful talk. So once more, if you have questions for Dr. Biona, please write them down and you can ask them in our panel discussion and open forum later. Our next speaker is the Deputy Director General of the Philippine Space Agency. She is also an associate professor and scientist too at the Institute of Environmental Science and Meteorology at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Dr. Perez is a recipient of the Outstanding Woman in the Nation's Service Award and the first Filipina to receive the ASEAN US Prize for Women. Her research interests include satellite remote sensing of the environment, climate data assimilation, climate change and variability, complex systems, and interdisciplinary application of physics. Please welcome Dr. Gay Jane P. Perez.
Hello, good afternoon. So let me share my screen now. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am, we can see it.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Today, I would like to share how we at the Philippine Space Agency apply space-based technologies and information and communication technology for disaster resilience and reduction. The establishment of the Philippine Space Agency back in 2019 signifies a crucial step for our country in building an integrated and sustainable national space program that will serve the country's needs, particularly in the following key development areas: national security and development, space research and development, hazard management and climate studies, space education awareness, space industry capacity building, and international cooperation. With this, PhilSA is considered as the central government agency for space science, technology, and applications. In the Philippines, we have had our own space-related capabilities for several years now. Here, we can see a more broadly a timeline of recent history, showing an overview on the various space science and technology activities that were developed over the past decade. So you can see here among the milestones, of course, are the development, launch, and operations of our first microsatellite, Diwata-1 in 2016, which was followed by Diwata-2 in 2018. You can also see here the launch of our first Maya-1 also in 2018, which was followed by 3 more Mayas. And very recently, we had Maya 3 and 4, which were just recently deployed from the International Space Station last October 6 this year. These endeavors stemmed from project-based initiatives of the Department of Science and Technology, which contributed and continues to contribute significantly, this time together with the newly established PhilSA, in reaching these milestones in space for the country. Now, this chart depicts the global satellite industry in the context of revenue. As you can see, the industry is composed of 3 biggest contributors: the ground equipment, satellite services, and non-satellite industry, which includes the commercial space, and here we have satellite manufacturing and launch industry. There are so many services we can get from satellite with high revenues from television, radio, broadband, up to remote sensing applications such as agriculture, change detection, disaster mitigation, and national security, among others. Now, the cost may be high in terms of manufacturing and providing the ground equipment for daily operations, but the return on investment and the value of space data is multiple times higher than the cost. Now, the PhilSA creates value in both of these sectors. The downstream, where the satellite data processing and development of products and services are integrated, and the upstream that deals with the technology consisting of the infrastructure and operations. Both of these are manifested in our flagship programs. Now, the PhilSA has launched two flagship programs which leveraged the existing initiatives of academic institutions and government agencies. This include the advanced satellite development as a vital component of national information infrastructure and mobilizing space data for digital inclusion, economy, and government. It is through these flagship programs sustaining our efforts, our current operations and capabilities that we are able to make significant strides in creating a national space program that consistently provide reliable quality data and that would secure long-term sustainability of our overall plans and programs on space data utilization. For the rest of my talk, I will be on space data for a couple of applications, starting with disaster risk reduction. The threats to the environment and society due to natural and man-made hazards occur at large scales and transcend borders. The role of satellite observation is vital in providing valuable data and actionable information, one that can address large-scale threats with large-scale solutions. Satellite data aids us in monitoring long-term and continuous observations at the global scale, thus providing a key role in climatological research. Assimilation of satellite observation can aid in forecasting, leading to the improved performance of weather and climate prediction models. Finally, because satellite technology can provide timely information on environmental changes, it can aid us in both response and recovery with the provision of pre- and post-disaster impact and needs assessment, as well as in mitigation. Given the Philippines' high vulnerability to natural hazards, the satellite data gathered is crucial for our disaster response operations. Here, satellite-derived products were used by emergency responders and rescue workers during a landslide in Naga, Cebu. Built infrastructure such as houses and buildings are identified using high-resolution images and artificial intelligence. Overlaid satellite image taken after the landslide clearly shows its extent. With this map, first responders were able to pinpoint the location of houses that were buried underneath this landslide for timely rescue and recovery. The PhilSA leverages the country's previous efforts in utilizing satellite data to address issues on flood, drought, and other climate-related events. As can be seen in this slide, we had one of the destructive typhoons in the country, Typhoon Umpong, in 2008. For flood monitoring and detection, we use satellite images to assess the affected areas. We gather huge volume of data through high-performance computing service, process it, and make it available in a short period of time. To further assess the impact of floods, we generate flood extent maps from different satellite data. This can help us prioritize areas for faster response and assistance. Just very recently, we have been devastated by Typhoon Odette, or known as RAI internationally. Recent flood maps generated by DATO's project show the extent of flooding in affected areas such as in Western Visayas. In addition, high-resolution images of badly hit areas such as in Sipalay, Negros Occidental, as shown in the right, can give us ideas on possible flooded areas, which is critical in prioritizing assistance. Here's another demonstration of satellite data that shows us information on power outage using night light images. Nightlight serves as proxy to human activities at night, which is critical in assessing the extent of damage or monitoring recovery by detecting changes in nightlight activities. Here, we utilize VIIRS night lights to detect power outages in Cebu after Typhoon Odette. Disaster risk reduction programs not only rely on Earth observation data. For a country that is often hit by disaster and climate-related events, we also see the importance of communications, especially for a nation separated into thousands of islands. So next, I will highlight our initiatives in addressing this digital divide. According to the 2019 DICT National ICT Household Survey, the following regions have the highest household internet accessibility. NCR with 33%, followed by CAR with about 30%, Region 4A 24%, Region 3 23%, and Regions 1 and 2 with 18% each. Meanwhile, it can also be observed that in the data that there are regions in the Philippines that have very limited and low accessibility to internet connectivity. Among these regions are BARM with the lowest accessibility of 95.5%, followed by regions 9 and 10 with 93.8% and 93.5% respectively, and regions 5 and 4B with about 93% each. The National Broadband Plan of the DICT pursues President Duterte's directives to accelerate the deployment of fiber optic cable and wireless technologies to improve internet speed. The plan leverages satellite as a cost-effective and rapid solution for broadband deployment in rural, remote, and far-flung areas where terrestrial networks can be uneconomical and logistically difficult. Satellites have proved efficient for quick delivery of vital internet connectivity to residents in such underserved and underserved areas, especially those situated in so-called geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. Moreover, satellites can provide urgent communication during disaster and emergencies with terrestrial infrastructure when terrestrial infrastructure may be disrupted, such as after the passing of a typhoon. Traditionally, in aforementioned circumstances, large geostationary satellites provide an expeditious option for connecting to the internet with only minimal ground infrastructure required. For instance, the ICT's free Wi-Fi project, Now People Connect, has deployed very small aperture terminal or VAST for geosatellites to establish internet connectivity in public areas. With this in mind, therefore, the PhilSA intends to contribute to effort aimed at bridging the digital divide through relevant space technologies such as new and emerging satellite systems. At the same time, by engaging closely with the satellite internet companies, we aim to open the door for local industry capacity building and development through know-how transfer and retention mechanisms, licensing, and supply opportunities. This we hope to achieve with the help of various agencies, including, among others, the DTI BOI and the DOST. As a first step, we propose this Incentivize project, which shall conduct an open call for new satellite internet operators or SIOs to conduct test deployments facilitated by the PhilSA of their services in the Philippines. These deployments will be implemented in selected remote sites in the country, which will allow the performance and viability of their new and advanced technologies to be demonstrated, experienced, and assessed ahead of planned and scheduled commercial service. Specifically, the call targets a company that operates satellites in so-called non-geostationary orbit or NGSO for providing internet access. Examples of such SIOs include OneWeb and Starlink. To demonstrate the potential of NGSO, we developed this interactive tool. This shows a calculation we made on the availability of the Starlink internet satellites in a given area in the country. Starlink is an American company founded by Elon Musk of SpaceX. By availability in a given area, we mean counting the number of Starlink satellites that pass overhead, which will enable connection to the internet. Since these satellites are moving, that is, they are not fixed in the horizon, they will complete their pass overhead, and another satellite needs to come by afterwards to maintain connection with the ground. We calculated those passes and showed the results at different places in our country. This shows, in particular, the result in the southern part of the country, specifically in Tawi-Tawi. We see that there are enough Starlink satellites passing overhead, one after the other, so that there can be about 99.9% availability, which means around 23.98 out of the 24 hours in a day. This calculation, however, does not show the connection speed and the actual experience in surfing the internet. It merely shows the availability of the satellites, which is necessary but not sufficient condition for establishing connectivity. Now, as we move forward, we continue to build our space ecosystem. And this time, we aim to develop an integrated and sustainable national space program according to the needs of the nation. This is determined through a decadal survey. A decadal survey is an assessment of the current status of Earth observation needs and the utilization in the country. It also defines and prioritizes the key challenges that could arise and could be addressed in the coming decade. In planning space programs, the decadal survey results serve as the basis for determining the priority missions to address the most urgent and important questions, for this case, in Earth observation and other satellite applications. The decadal survey's primary objective is to generate recommendation for an integrated and sustainable conduct of space-based Earth system science programs and technology applications. Now, there are 8 focus areas under the decadal survey. These are the following: communications and navigation, hydrologic cycles and climate studies, weather, air quality and atmospheric processes, Earth systems and the interior dynamics and processes, security and defense, hazards and disaster risk reduction and management, aquatic ecosystems and water resources management, terrestrial ecosystems, and land resource management. Now, I just want to share one of the initial result of this survey, indicating that there are several ongoing projects that fall under DRR, disaster risk reduction, or the focus area 4, as well as in aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. This indicates how we prioritize DRR given our vulnerability to disasters and other environmental threats. However, there is a need to sustain these initiatives as we are often hit by climate-related events and other natural hazards, which are getting worse every year. So the continues to lead the country in building a robust space ecosystem. Our programs aim not only to strengthen the agency, but also to empower other sectors so that the country as a whole can be a key player in contributing to the sustainable and peaceful uses of outer space for the benefit of humanity. So with that, I hope you can check out our website and our social media pages. So here I'm showing our publication, Our Place in Space, which can be accessed in the website. So it's a 3-volume report, and the first volume shows different applications of satellite data, including for that of DRR. And then the other one here is the interactive tool that I showed earlier. You can also access this through our website. So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perez, for your wonderful talk. We shall now proceed to the panel discussion and open forum. So to facilitate the question and answer portion, so we would like to request for our moderator, Dr. Tapia.
Hey, thank you very much, Marlon. Do we have any questions from the participants? From the Zoom, or maybe I think we are live on Facebook. So do we have questions from Facebook? Okay, I have here one to Dr. Biona. E-vehicle could contribute to the reduction of mobile source of carbon emissions. However, this may cause an increase in demand for electricity. Hence, stationary source of carbon emission, such as power plants, may rapidly increase. How can this externality be addressed?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Earlier in my first slide, I think this is the second slide, I showed the greenhouse gas reductions when you shift to electrics, and that accounts already the greenhouse gases from stationary sources, okay, from the power generation side. And even though our grid is still a fossil fuel rich, okay, okay, we're still expecting around 30 to 40% reductions in emissions. But of course, um, certain policies could be adopted to facilitate entry of and matching of EV power requirements and renewables. Like for example, in the roadmap that we're developing right now, we're proposing that power from renewable energy sources with use in charging will be accorded VAT-free incentives. So that encourages now the EV charging industry to do direct purchase from renewable energy sources. So that basically also increases the demand for RE and mix for RE.
Okay, thank you very much. So to follow up on that, would you think that the Philippines should consider the rise or the increase in electric vehicles for planning future energy supply?
Yeah, definitely. It's being integrated already now in the plans. But as I've said, it would be good really to do a resource-based, regionalized, sustainable transport plan. It's not always electric. We have to rationalize our programs. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're in Bicol, that's a biofuel-rich area. So why don't you go more on biofuels rather than electrics? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have other questions? Okay, I have here another one. This is addressed to Dr. Abundo. In doing environmental, I think, do we still have Dr. Abundo here or not? Okay, I think we can um, send this question to Dr. Abundo later on. So, any other questions? Let me ask one for Dr. De Mafeli. So, I'm actually quite curious about the parang whole systems approach when it comes to biodiesel production. I'm also quite wondering if you have considered, say, the food sector aspect of producing bioethanol. Maybe if on scenario like if it competes with food supply or not.
Okay. We avoided the use of any food material or food feedstock because we have a joint administrative order series of 2008 that prohibits the use of grains of food. Even land for food production is prohibited. So on a commercial level, you cannot produce the necessary feedstock or raw material because you need the Department of Agriculture approval. But of course, in UPLB, we have a lot of researches on different raw material, no? From the first, second, and third generation feedstock. But well, of course, we know that it could not be commercialized, but we're looking only for the technical viability.
Thank you so much. I ask that because I have two groups, or I have two thesis groups who are working on the bioenergy aspect by using land suitability analysis. So those insights might be useful for them. And also just to follow up my question actually is um, um, what would be your view or insight about um, um, dedicating more land for biodiesel production?
Well, first on land suitability, UPLB is a comprehensive university, and basically it started as agricultural university. We have a lot of soil and land suitability as well as availability to map out any commercial biodiesel production or establishment. So we match the climatic condition, the soil, the availability in terms of hectareage, as well as the characteristic of crops. No, so definitely on the second question, we as an agricultural university, we avoid the conflict between food and fuel production. So that's why we work on second and third generation like lignocellulosic, algae, both macro and micro, trying to reduce the land use and a better sustainability.
Okay, so yeah, I assume that that means that expansion would be just on a uh, maybe no expansion to a very minimal additional land use um for bioethanol production. Okay, do we
Yes,
have
but we have a more bigger picture in terms of feedstock requirement because, for example, on the bioethanol side, we lack the necessary feedstock. So we are working on the breeding vertical on the same total land area at increased yield and balancing it. No, if you're using sugarcane as well as the byproduct sugarcane molasses plus work on like sweet sorghum, we could minimize, yes, I have said, the use of additional land, but basically the solution is on the vertical, on the breeding side, and we have a lot of potential accessions here. On the biodiesel side, we have currently we have about 707 million liters per year capacity, but we're only using about 240, and we have about 1.7 billion potential coconut oil. Well, of course, 60 to 70% of which were imported. So I don't think, so as of now, for 5%, even 10% probably will not be, it would not be difficult on the biodiesel side, but the problem is on the bioethanol side.
Okay, thank you very much. Um, um, let's see if we have some questions in the Q&A here in Zoom. We have one for Dr. Perez, but I think Dr. Perez has already left, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. So I think we can just have this question um, uh, sent to her later on. So do we have other questions from the participants? I have one for Dr. Biona. It's actually related to. I have actually two questions for Dr. Biona. First is the question of whether it's possible to really maximize the use of electricity for transportation. So that's my first question. And my second question is if that would be possible, is there um is there a possibility that we can, because I saw on the I think that's one of the last slides on your presentation, the I think the co-creation one. I've noticed about the use of mobile phones with determining whether the vehicle coming is already in the full capacity or whether it's if the vehicle coming can still accommodate the person checking it. So, my second question is it what is your opinion about having artificial intelligence in the transportation sector?
I'll first answer your first question. In energy planning, there's what we call the reference energy scenario. So you first have to set that up because you have a lot of requirements, like lot of demands, service, key mobile service demands. So that could involve logistics, that could involve person transport. So a lot of services, and it varies. The distances varies, the characteristics varies, the schedule varies. Okay. On the other hand, you also have the different transport technologies. So yeah, so you can have electric vehicles, you can have key bicycles, different types of buses. You have natural gas buses. So a lot also of sustainable transport technologies. Okay. In addition, you've got also the supply chain of your energy. So you have your electricity supply chain. It varies depending on the energy sources. You've got your supply chain also for petroleum. So all these things, when you combine, you set up your reference energy scenario. You can actually do optimization in there. You can do matching. You can define your objective function and then simulate things and determine what will be the mix. That will tell you like okay, what activities should be served by electric vehicles, what percentage should be the size of electric, and all of those things are iterated, especially if you also put in, for example, the economic side, because the demand for increased demand in certain fuels or energy could also drive prices up. So okay, so yeah, you can actually model this if you want really to optimize your the stability of key mobile services. Yeah, so that is something that you can do. You might have some students that would want to work on that one. And then on the second question, the main idea of the project actually is to expand the use of electric vehicles. Right now, it's mostly e-trikes and e-jeepneys. The idea is okay, how to integrate e-mobility in the operations of local government units. So the idea is to have electric vehicles that are shared by the different local government unit branches. So you have the barangays, you have different departments within the city hall. You have the health centers, for example, and all of these have transport demands. Different purposes: delivery of goods, transport of people to work sites, these things. So the idea is to have a shared pool of vehicles. Okay, that may be tapped on by any of the departments whenever they need it. So vehicles are no longer assigned to each of the departments, but it's shared, and smart systems are used to facilitate the sharing of the services. It's also like it could go for a trip that could also be shared, as shown in the video earlier. So definitely AI is coming in there. They're optimizing, for example, which vehicle to tap on certain trips. And also, there's also a lot of AI in the vehicles themselves. We do condition-based monitoring. The system tries to understand how the vehicles behave, the maintenance requirements, and this kind of things. And also, it tries to understand what's the pattern of service requirements, so that over time you're able to optimize the operations and operations of the smart system. So definitely, AI has a lot of things to do in mobility. But as I've said, AI, smart transport, e-mobility, these are just tools. The end really is sustainable mobility, and it's not always the most high-tech solution is not always the best solution. In some cases, a very simple solution would do. So I think that we have to focus more on the end rather than the means. But the means, of course, could help a lot if adopted properly. Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Yep.
This is addressed to Dr. Biona. So with the onslaught of Typhoon Odette, so I'm actually curious if system resilience is something that we factor in in the design of smart systems for mobility. Because as I understand, so as we go forward towards more smarter systems for transportation, so this usually also involves developing more complex infrastructure, more complex systems. So is there a mechanism to incorporate or to evaluate if these systems will function properly if ever we have natural disasters, typhoons, earthquakes, or similar
Okay,
events?
thanks for asking that. Yesterday, actually, we had a meeting, and before the meeting, we were discussing about what happened with Odette, and the concept of climate resilient electric vehicle ecosystem came up. So we decided to benchmark, and then we scanned which countries are going in this direction, and we found out that okay, Netherlands is one, and we're going to look at also other countries who would want to benchmark okay their policies. So policies on one side, ensuring the resiliency of the EV ecosystem and the smart system. But of course, on the technology side, you can also put in there a lot of resiliencies. Um, like for example, the system that we're working on, there will always be redundancies. Like it can operate manually if needed. It can operate also. We can like we already planned it out. Like if there will be outages, then we go radio communications and this kind of thing. So you always have to put those things um, into it. But we would want to know more what other countries are doing to ensure the resiliency of the system. It's two things: how to ensure the resiliency of your EV ecosystem or your smart system. At the same time, how can you use your EV ecosystem or your smart system during disasters? So we're also trying to benchmark what other countries are doing along this line, because the vehicles have power storages, and this is something that could be maximized during typhoons, for example. So yeah, so maybe the integration of smart grids using the batteries, so the vehicle to grid technologies that existing, but okay, as I've said, it's not always technology. The more challenging part there actually is how to encourage EV owners to allow their vehicle batteries, to be used as storage for the grid. Yeah, so there's a lot of policy side, and that's why it's very important to benchmark what other countries are doing. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you so
much, sir.
much. Okay, I think that's for our question open forum. So let me just give a quick synthesis of what we have for this session. So for the first talk, we have about the biofuels industry, which Dr. Dimafelis had shown us certain approaches wherein we can achieve maybe up to 60% reduction in CO2. And there are some recommendations about for the biofuel industry, especially for those in the sugar base part. Um, um, this includes the cogeneration of electricity and heat, CO2 recovery, market for waste, solid and wastewater, and then increase in source efficiency. In the talk, we have it is shown different approaches like the use of software sugar and the use of Aspen Plus per process simulation for ethanol production. For the second talk, we have about the marine renewable energy, which is um, technically from the first part, we have the different sources of energy in the ocean, like currents, tides, salinity gradient, waves, and then the thermal energy. So um, there is a big opportunity for exploring the energy from the ocean, especially with this five sources in the five sources of energy. And as an archipelagic country, this is actually good to explore. For the third talk on smart mobility and transportation, we witnessed the different concepts or different aspects, social, environmental aspect of e-vehicles and their deployment throughout the Philippines. An important lesson here may be when we try to plan, or when we try um, to address the issue in transportation, is the key is the terms to avoid, to shift, and then to improve. And lastly, we have Dr. Perez talk on the use of satellites, especially on analyzing different well geographic related um, issues and concerns. One of the demonstration is on the internet accessibility in different parts of the country. So we to conclude for what we have discussed this afternoon, it is really well, there is really a need for us to explore possible solutions to address climate change, clean energy, sustainable cities, and communities, and marine biodiversity. So it is really a very interesting talk that we have this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tapia. Now, to formally close our program, so we would like to invite the project leader of the ERDT UPLB. She is also the Dean of the College of Engineering and Agro-Industrial Technology of UPLB. Please welcome Dr. Rosana Marisi Amongo.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to our 4 plenary speakers this afternoon. They have shared with us various topics and very exciting topics on renewable energy, smart transportation, ICT for disaster resilience, and risk reduction. So the organizing committee of the ERDT consortium would like to thank our 4 speakers, and I would like also to personally thank them. Dr. Rex B. Demafelis of UPLB, Dr. Michelle Luchinvar Abondo of the Assistant Director of and Program Director of SAAB NTU Joint Lab, Dr. Jose Bienvenido Manuel Bibion, the Executive Dean of the DLSE Enrique Rizon Logistics Institute, and Dr. Jane P. Perez, the Deputy Director General of the Philippine Space Agency, applying space-based who shared with us with the topic on technology and information communication for disaster resilience and risk reduction. So thank you also to Dr. Jean Frederick Tapia for as our moderator and for the synthesis of these presentations. And of course to Engineer Marlon Mupon. Ang ganda po ng boses nyo as our host for this afternoon, and to the ERDT staff and support team. Thank you very much. Indeed, we have learned a lot in this session. Even the pandemic cannot stop us from honing ourselves and learning the current developments in engineering and technology. I would also like to personally thank our ERDT program leader, Dean Ferdinand G. Manigdeg, for leading the consortium to stage this event, the 17th ERDT conference, with the theme Engineering, Innovation, and Technology for Recovery and Resilience. So this is brought to us by the joint efforts. I would just like to mention the engineering consortium members, Ateneo de Manila, Central Luzon State University, De La Salle University, Mapua Institute of Technology, Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology, MSU IIT, University of San Carlos, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and of course, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And of course, the Science Education Institute of the Department of Science and Technology for bringing us the 17th ERDT conference. So I know that the 17th ERDT conference has rekindled our passion to constant learning. So let's bank on this, because whatever we learn, we can store it in our treasure box and we can share it to others. So let's keep on learning and keep on sharing for a better future. So Tomorrow, I think we will have the second day. So again, it will be another exciting day for all of us. We will be listening to the presentation of our scholars with at least 6 major tracks where they will be discussing their research outputs. And so with that, it's already past. It's almost 5:14. And so for now, let's just end this first day of activity. We will take a break and we will come back again tomorrow. Thank you to everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay fit and healthy. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Sir Marlon. Back to you, Sir Marlon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amongo. So once more, we would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. We would also like to invite everyone to join us in the oral presentation session tomorrow. It will be from 1 p.m. onwards. So the details will be flashed on the screen as you log out. Additionally, for our participants who need a certificate of attendance, kindly check the link that is shared on the chat box. So we have a link there. Please fill out that link in order for you to receive your certificate of attendance. Once more, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you tomorrow in the second day of the 17th Engineering Research and Development for Technology Conference.